Kurland's on the air. It's Yetta Kurland live. Yetta Kurland, listen in.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Yetta Kurland Live. I am your host, Yetta Kurland. I hope you're all warm and dry somewhere. Tonight we'll be speaking with the registered nurse, Linda O'Neill of Brooklyn, as well as Brooklyn State Committeewoman Joanne Simon about the future of LICH and other hospital closures throughout New York. Then we'll hear from the co-founders of the Slant, Stephanie Fairyington and Shirley Velasquez, about media bias and the future of LGBT media. I first want to thank our media partners, Go Magazine, Labor Press, the Soho Journal, Westview News, and the New Civil Rights Movement for helping make this show happen, as well as our community sponsors, the Ritz and Whole Earth Bakery. You can pick up a copy of Westview News at 69 Charles Street. Check out Go Magazine at your local newsstand or at gomag.com. The Soho Journal is at sohojournal.com. The New Civil Rights Movement is at thenewcivilrightsmovement.com, and Labor Press is at laborpress.org. You can also listen to us live stream at wwrl1600.com. And please join us on Facebook at Yetta Kurland Live, on Twitter at Yetta Kurland, and check us out on the Huffington Post at huffingtonpost.com/Yetta. In the news this week, Mitt Romney asked that we respect his right not to respect the rights of LGBT families. Jeb Bush officially changed his mind on immigration. He now opposes a path to citizenship for undocumented workers. And Chris Christie was pointedly not invited to the CPAC Conservative Forum. I wonder if that has anything to do with his efforts with Barack Obama and the Sandy relief efforts here in the area. In other news, in Congress tonight, a filibuster focusing on drone attacks and warrantless wiretapping is being led by Republican Rand Paul, with only minimal Democratic support. All this while the so-called sequester cuts begin to hit hard. The State Department released a first-ever guide advising LGBT Americans on world travel this week, while in Mississippi, unfortunately, an openly gay candidate for mayor was brutally murdered. Here in New York, political bickering continued to hold up the increase to the minimum wage, and Mount Sinai and Continuum voted to merge into New York's biggest hospital chain as LICH and other hospitals fight off closures. We'll be talking about hospitals, media, and more right here on Yetta Kurland Live with Linda O'Neill, Joanne Simon, Stephanie Fairyington, Shirley Velasquez, and you, our listeners. Please call in with questions or comments, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. We'll also be joined with our first segment with our producer, the lovely, the talented Paul Newell, here with us on the microphone tonight. Paul, thanks for coming over here.
Always a pleasure.
I know you've been doing a lot of work. Paul is a district leader. He is a producer of our radio show. He has been leading the fight here in Manhattan with others with the Coalition for a New Village Hospital and the closure of St. Vincent's Hospital. We'll bring that into the discussion tonight about LICH, as well as other things. And we have Joanne Simon. Joanne is a longtime community activist. She's a disability rights attorney. She's the Democratic district leader and state committeewoman for the 52nd Assembly District, which includes, if I'm not mistaken, the LICH Hospital area.
It does.
And many other neighborhoods as well that it serves. Joanne, thanks for coming online with us tonight.
Happy to be here.
And again, if you got questions for folks, please give us a call, 212-868-0975. We're also being joined by Linda O'Neill. Linda is a registered nurse who has been working at Long Island College Hospital for over 30 years. She has worked in the surgery and dialysis units and currently works in the ICU. Linda is an active member of the New York State Nurses Association, that's NYSNA. She's been a resident of the neighborhood where LICH is and has served for over 50 years. Linda, thank you so much for coming on air with us on Yetta Kurland Live.
Thank you so much for having me, Yetta.
Again, the number is 212-868-0975, 212-868-0975. Joanne, I'll start with you. Please give us a little bit of a background. Tell us about LICH and how we got to this point where you guys are fighting to stave off this closure.
Well, Long Island College Hospital, or LICH as we call it, was I think opened in 1858. So it's been part of our community and part of the fabric of our communities for many, many years. It serves mostly 6 neighborhoods: Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, in which it is actually located, Carroll Gardens, Borum Hill, 4 public housing entities that are in the Borum Hill area, and also Red Hook houses, for example, and it serves the Red Hook community. So it is a extremely important service in the community, and it has been for many, many years. There has been problems with financial management. Not too long ago, about 12 years ago, Continuum took over LICH, and that was a very bad marriage. It seemed to be one of those abusive relationships where LICH was, their resources were funneled elsewhere on behalf of and as part of Continuum's approach to healthcare, and that really damaged Long Island College Hospital. It was in danger of having the maternity and the pediatrics units closed a few years ago. There was a concerted effort to try and keep that from happening. And one of the white knights that came out and offered to work with LICH to save it in many ways is Downstate. That turned out to be a very bad rebound relationship for LICH.
Now, is LICH a level 1 trauma care center, or what type of hospital is this? And maybe that question is for Linda.
It's a full-service acute and primary care facility. It's a very needed and vital hospital, again, in the downtown Brooklyn area. Last year, we saw more than 58,000 patients in our ER, and admitted into our units more than 12,000 patients. Now, so this definitely, we have a psychiatric unit that has a 40-bed. We do cardiac cath. We are a designated stroke center. I mean, we have a wealth of facilities and services that we provide to those communities that were just mentioned.
And Joanne had mentioned that there has been, I guess, some financial challenges over the last, I believe she said 12 years. When did you start to realize that there was an actual real concern that there would be a closure of this hospital?
Well, I have to tell you, the holidays came. SUNY Downstate actually sent out Christmas cards to all the employees. So this was something that happened possibly 3 weeks right after the holidays, and it has been going through like a runaway train ever since then. So it would have to be just within the last 6 weeks.
Wow, very recent.
Right,
very,
very recent, extremely recent.
And
I was actually taken totally by surprise.
That is amazing, Paul. And obviously, you know, it's horrible to hear that LICH is dealing with this stuff. Why are there so many hospitals on the chopping block in New York? Why are we hearing this story time after time? Obviously, you were involved in the fight around St. Vincent's Hospital. When you heard the story of LICH, what were your thoughts? Were you thinking, here we go again, or what were your kind of reactions to that?
Right, and we've been working with a number of folks around the city with the Healthcare Vote 2013 movement. I know you've been involved with that as well, Yetta. And what you've got is a number of forces coming together. Number one, you have a defunding of health care for working and middle-class folks in the city and actually nationally as well. Across the country, resources are going much more to high-end consultants, folks that are being paid multi-million-dollar fees for things that are not directly connected with care.
Right.
You then have this movement as well as to consolidate hospital beds in as few institutions as possible, most of them in New York on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and in doing so using institutions in other neighborhoods and other boroughs and other areas to funnel those high-dollar paying beds to these institutions on the Upper East Side. And that's what you see with this merger coming up and so forth, trying to consolidate, and that's what we saw at St. Vincent's. Then you have a factor which is particularly acute in a situation like we saw at St. Vincent's in the Lower West Side and at LICH in Cobble Hill, where you have a real estate boom in New York City that's been going on for some time, and there is always pressure for every space in a desirable neighborhood. And LICH is on Atlantic Avenue It's very close to the river.
It'd be a nice view. There'd be a nice view there for a lovely condominium, wouldn't there?
Exactly. There'd be beautiful views. The view would not be as nice if you have a heart attack and you need to you need evacuation from your condominium. But
all joking aside, and you mentioned Healthcare Vote 2013. I mean, there are a lot of organizations that have been obviously very concerned about this, who were involved in the fight around St. Vincent's and who continue to be involved in some of these things. The Metro Health folks, Jeff Gold and Mark Hannay, those folks. Obviously, NYSNA has been just on the forefront of the fight. 1199, I know, worked very hard up until the closure and throughout the closure of St. Vincent's Hospital. Has NYSNA, 1199, these folks been involved in the fight, as well as Metro Health and these other organizations in LICH, and has that been helpful for you?
Oh,
Yes.
definitely. Actually, we were able to get through NYSNA a temporary restraining order.
That's great.
Yes. And we were to meet with the Supreme Court judge tomorrow, but that was postponed, pending the...
Who is the Supreme Court judge? Do you know who that is?
Yes, it was Betsy Barrows, who validated our position and actually issued the TRO, the temporary restraining order. And this also allows us to buy some time that we needed because, like I said, this was so rushed through that there had not been any sort of community involvement. Sure. To my knowledge, and again, I live in the community as well as work at LICH. So this has given us time to reach out further to our communities, the Red Hook areas, the Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens. I mean, we deal with an array of communities as well as the entire Brooklyn to get the message across that this is in threat, that LICH is in threat of closing.
You raised a couple of very good points. One of them, obviously, the open meetings laws. And I just have to say, Joanne, you're a fellow attorney, so we can talk a little legalese here. And I have to say, the coalition, the folks in the West Village, the area, we looked on both fearful for LICH and obviously in solidarity with the fight, but also really happy that you guys were able to win that fight in the courts. When we went into New York State Supreme Court, there was a definite willingness on behalf of the court to do something, but because the entity had already gone into bankruptcy court, there was a stay that stopped us from getting any of that type of relief. Joanne, did you guys learn anything from the work that we had done in St. Vincent's? Were you able to learn something from those fights and to help you in terms of preparing on a legal battlefront? And were you involved in any of the legal work involved in NYSNA getting the restraining order?
Well, I wasn't directly involved in the legal work in terms of my own legal practice, but I have spoken with the attorneys on that matter. And I think that everybody has learned from the St. Vincent's fight. A couple of things that are specific to LICH that have affected it in terms of its TRO. Obviously, the bankruptcy issue is very different for St. Vincent's, but this is, as part of Downstate, it's a public institution.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the Open Public Meetings Law was really the linchpin to getting this temporary restraining order. There was injunctive relief that was requested. That is being heard on Friday before a different judge, because the different judge that issues the TRO, which was Judge Barrows, it'll be before Judge Baines on Friday morning, as I understand. So that's the Open Public Meetings issue, and it's in Article 78. So if for example, something happens and they go back and they redecide this and they do it in a public forum and they follow the Open Public Meetings Law and they make the same decision, then there's obviously the issue of the merits.
Right.
And it's obviously an issue of the Department of Health determining that the people in this area don't deserve health care. And I just want to make one point because I talk about the community all the time. That's where I live, but it's also where I work. Downtown Brooklyn has 32,000 students, more than Cambridge, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. We have almost 18,000 jobs expected to be in Dumbo alone in the next 2 years. We have 70,000 workers just in Metrotech. This is the third largest business district, and LICH serves it. We have 17,000 fans coming into the Barclays Arena. So closing LICH is not only bad for the community and bad for patients, it's bad for business. And it's on high ground. You know, we served patients when other hospitals were flooded and unable to serve. It's very important part about LICH.
Yeah, very, very important part is what we're facing in terms of climate change and the adverse impacts. But I think also to switch into layperson's terms with the open meetings laws, in essence, I think the message and one of the things we learned is if there's even a potential possibility of a closure, get out in front of that. Make sure that you're finding out what is going on. There are a lot of laws that protect residents and community organizers, not just in terms of closures, but financial disclosures, annual financial disclosures that entities, not-for-profits need to file with the Attorney General's office. And the open meetings laws obviously are about giving notice to people to let them know there could in fact be a closure and that there has to be meetings and opportunities for the community to come in to speak about that and the underlying issues, like you said, of the right for people in communities to be able to receive services. So, Linda, what's the long-term plan here? Do you have hopes that we'll be able to keep LICH open, or what's?
Oh yes, we have hope.
That's great to hear.
I think that presented with the information that we have, the need for this hospital, for these communities, actually for all of Brooklyn, I have to be very confident that reason will prevail. I can't see it any other way. Reason has to prevail in this.
Paul made a joke about nice condominium views from the waterfront. How powerful are the real estate interests, and is that your biggest obstacle in terms of this, or do you think that there's just kind of a changing face of healthcare where we're seeing the landscape of hospitals, closures happening, smaller facilities, more reliance on urgent care facilities? And what do you think your biggest obstacle is with this?
I think it's twofold. I think it's both. I think the real estate definitely can't be overlooked. I mean, you're talking about property that has been estimated anywhere from $300 to $500 million. Again, I know the views. We look right over the pier, so that in terms of a business sense, in real estate, yes, that definitely plays a big part of it. But there is also a changing face in healthcare in New York. There has been plans that stated by Governor Cuomo to allow for-profit hospitals to come into the area. And what better area than one that has seen a major gentrification, that has seen a population explosion of in excess of 300%, that it just makes sense. So, it is twofold, for real estate and also then to possibly allow for-profit hospitals to set up shop in Brooklyn.
Fighting against powerful real estate interests and the privatization of healthcare. You're listening to Linda O'Neill and Brooklyn State Committeewoman Joanne Simon on Yetta Kurland Live, as well as Paul Newell, district leader and producer here at WWRL. We're going to go to some callers. We got a bunch of people calling in. Let's go to our first caller. We're going to go to Daryl from Midtown. Daryl, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Oh, good evening, Yetta. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I want to chime in on the state. Governor Cuomo is trying to privatize hospitals or replace the public hospitals, which provide a great care to the community. And the private ones, of course, will not provide the same services that the public ones will.
Yeah.
I just want to do all I can to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if I can help in any way, I wish you would let me know.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for your call. Thank you for your willingness to help. Linda, is there somewhere people can go to get involved? Are there petitions happening? Is there a way for community members to show support?
Without a doubt. They can definitely contact Governor Cuomo. His number should be listed. And they can, more importantly, the Department of Health needs to hear. We will be down this Friday at the courts on Girolamo and Adams Street to just show support in terms of whatever decision that's going to be made. So, yes.
And that's at 9 a.m., correct?
Yes, that is at 9 a.m.
Great. And, the Department of Health plays a key role here. How do we get those guys to realize that there really is an emerging health crisis in New York City, Paul? Sometimes people say, well, there's thousands of hospital beds. There's too many hospital beds in New York. What do you say to that? And how do you make the Department of Health to realize that, lives are really at stake here?
Well, I mean, in terms of the answering the question of the so-called glut of hospital beds, one has to look at a city of 8.3 million people and where people live and where people actually need emergency care, and it's not only on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Not that we would begrudge anyone on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
A wonderful neighborhood, and we wish everybody uptown well.
Yeah.
And access to health care. But the message to the governor needs to be, A, that this has to be a priority, that New Yorkers' lives are at risk when you have people spread long distance from healthcare. We were talking about Red Hook during the storm. Now, Red Hook is one of the most isolated communities in New York. It's, there's a highway between it. They barely even have subway service at this point.
There is the L train.
No, they have the F, but even that has not been running there.
It's a peninsula. It's very bad public access.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
transportation.
Public transportation, and you are losing valuable minutes by crossing Fort Hamilton Parkway, going across to, I guess, whatever city you take folks, the SUNY Downstate or Brooklyn General or what have you, and that is a public health crisis, and that is part of New York State, and the New York State Health Department needs to be aware that these needs to be a priority. To the caller who was looking for places with petitions, I believe SaveLitch.org is one place to go. I don't know if, Joanne, you know other.
Well, there are a number of, I think if you just Google, there are petitions, for example, Assemblywoman Millman created an online petition that's gotten about 5,000 signatures. The last I looked. And NYSNA obviously has done a tremendous amount of organizing around this. They're the concerned physicians.
And you can also contact the New York State Health Commissioner at healthstatenewyork.us. And I also have a phone number.
Go ahead,
518-474-2011, and that's for the New York State Health Commissioner, Mr. Shaw.
518-474-2011.
Yeah.
And those are important calls, and those signatures are important on those petitions. I know, it meant a lot for us to be able to present 10,000 signatures to the Department of Health, and really make a statement that the community is behind this.
Exactly.
I would really encourage letters to the governor, because the governor's decision, he has an obligation to the citizens, not just to the SUNY Board of Trustees. Their fiduciary duty is different.
Exactly.
I also, the Berger Commission.
So is the Board of Health.
Right. And the Board of Health, and the Health Commissioner. And the other thing is to point out that, the Berger work group did not recommend that LICH be closed. The Berger group recommended consolidating downstate's inpatient services at LICH. And LICH has a good payer mix of insured. So, what's happening is downstate made bad decisions and is now visiting their problems on LICH. But it's really going to break the back of the communities and the people who work and live in the area.
And the other issue also, too, that LICH is the only hospital that serves those communities.
Sure.
Downstate actually sits literally across the street from the huge Kings County Hospital. So that they do have other facilities in the area. If I remember right, I think there's 3.
Yes.
In the area. There's just LICH to serve those communities.
And I have to say, I'm a huge fan of Governor Cuomo. I think he takes really strong positions. I will never be able to thank him enough for passing marriage equality. And I do think that he rises to challenges. Sometimes we have to galvanize a group of people to ask for that relief, but I do think that under his administration, I certainly hope that this hospital issue will be resolved. It is a huge problem. I mean, you just in talking, you raised a couple of very important issues. For one, what Joanne's saying about, how much effort is being done to stave off the financial problems that help create this perfect confluence of, real estate development and closures of hospitals. And, why aren't we spending the time to make sure that these hospitals are set up for success? A hospital properly run may not make as much money as luxury condominium sales, but properly run, it is solvent. Isn't that true?
Of course. And how do you not build up your infrastructure? You talk about building, and I'm talking condominiums that I haven't seen. I have the luxury of being able to walk to work. These are structures that I only thought would be built in Manhattan. How do you take away the most vital of infrastructure, your hospitals, and build these huge condominiums? People don't get sick. I mean, it's just a no-brainer to me.
There's a clause in the sale for the condominiums that you promise you'll never get sick when you need hospital services once moving in there. It's a joke, obviously.
Yes, I know.
Join
I was going to say that, when this issue about broadly and leadership from government to balance these competing interests. And that is, if you look at Jane Jacobs, she talked about there is the sort of commercial, and I'm probably using the terminology wrong, and the caretaking function of our society, and that the hospitals and government is not supposed to be about,
Profit.
Profit.
Right. But I think that's exactly right. I also think that hospitals properly run don't lose the kind of money that we're seeing.
In fact, there was just an article in Time magazine that was, I think, really important reading last week about how tremendously profitable nonprofit hospitals can be. We're talking about executives getting paid 8-figure salaries, and really, and consultants, a whole class of consultants that are taking hundreds of millions of dollars out of the healthcare system, and that is exactly the kind of thing that takes a hospital that does serve a mix of various kind of paying patients, from Medicaid to Medicare to fully insured to self-pay, and makes them unviable when saddled with those costs.
Linda, you talked about privatizing healthcare. Is this really another way to cut out those who are not insured, who are unable to pay for health insurance?
Could be, yes, because again, this was mentioned as a pilot plan to actually bring for-profit hospitals into Brooklyn, something that is not here at this point. So it's something definitely to think about and to be aware of.
Let's try to squeeze a couple of more callers in before we end the segment. There's a bunch of folks here. We'll go to Julie next from Staten Island. Julie, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi, this is a co-worker of Linda's, and I just wanted to call in and say, Linda, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for speaking out for us, getting the word out.
Thank you,
You are
Julie.
so much appreciated by all of us.
Thank you, Julie.
And Julie, thank you. And thanks to NYSNA. You guys, you just have been a powerhouse in all of this. You've been out in the front lines.
Yes, I have to say that. My union has been at the forefront. Mm-hmm. And when the rumors first started, they did not let them go past a week. I guess also knowing what happened at St. Vincent's and understanding the trend, that if you allow this to go even further than 2 weeks, because the speed at which they're trying to close these hospitals, they were on it immediately. So, yes, my union really does deserve a lot of credit.
It really, really does. And we're just so proud that you guys were able to get out in front of this, because that's exactly, this stuff is planned months, years ahead, and so good for you to be able to get that restraining order. I'm going to squeeze in one last caller before we end. Charles from Brooklyn. Charles, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yes, thank you for promoting us on, with our plight. And thanks to Linda, my co-worker, and she's doing an amazing job tonight.
Are you a fellow worker at LICH Hospital?
Oh, definitely. I've been there, I don't want to date myself, but I've been there over 20 plus years myself.
Why do you think LICH Hospital is threatened, is potentially closing?
Well, it's all about, the politicians, you very rarely see our Mayor Bloomberg in Brooklyn unless, something unfortunate happens. And all it's about is to just drive out, health care in Brooklyn. There's so many communities near our hospital. You have Red Hook projects, you have Gowanus projects, you have Whitehawk. Yeah. We even serve people that come on these cruise lines, like the Cunard ships and the Princess cruises, who have gotten sick coming from other countries, coming to New York, and we are the nearest hospital to that body of water that has saved these people and treated these people. So we are vital to this community.
Well, keep on fighting, Charles. We wish you the best of luck here in Manhattan. We'll be watching your struggle, watching your fight. Joanne, Linda, thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Keep us posted. Let's give a shout out for that website again. Paul, where can people go to get involved, sign the petition?
SaveLich.org.
SaveLich.org. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking with some more folks here on Yetta Kurland Live. Again, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
WWRL, sharing and celebrating the LGBT community's ideas, energy, and accomplishments.
That's the power and the beauty of New York.
A message of equality and pride.
1600.
And we are back on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600, equality, Pride Radio. I apologize for my voice, listeners. I have just getting over a horrible cold. It sounds much worse than it is, for which I apologize. Before we go to our next segment, we've got Charmaine Wesler on the line to tell us a little bit about this weekend's 20th original GLBT Expo. Charmaine, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. Thanks for coming on to talk to us.
Oh, thanks, Yetta. Nice to speak with you.
Yes.
And yeah, I hope you're feeling better.
Well, thank you.
It's been a terrible season for colds and everything.
It really has been.
I know, and the weather isn't going to be helping either. But the good news is we have a good weekend coming Saturday and Sunday. It's supposed to be beautiful for our show.
Perfect segue. So tell us about it. Where is it? When is it? And what do you expect to be highlighting this year?
Well, it's going to be Saturday and Sunday, the 9th and 10th at the Javits Center. We're in the bigger hall this year.
Oh.
And we are expecting a huge crowd. This is our 20th anniversary, if you can believe this. I don't know how that happened because I don't feel like I'm getting very old.
It makes me feel old, yeah, definitely.
But it's 20 years, and we're looking forward. We have a great stage lineup, wonderful entertainers. We have Amanda Lepore, Peppermint, Jade Starling, Josh Zuckerman, Destiny Divine, and a whole slew of others. And in our video lounge, we have an exciting lineup there. We also have some wonderful speakers this year, some great seminars. A lot of things are happening in Key West. We're going to have a wedding. And so it's really...
a lot going on. It sounds like a lot. And also there's, I think, hundreds of LGBT exhibitors and businesses and supporters and all sorts of stuff.
And, we are thankful for not only our exhibitors and sponsors, but for the community as well. 20 years ago when we said we were going to do this, people said, it'll never work.
Right.
Said, no, it will. And we were right. We're still around, and, it's been wonderful.
It's incredible.
Be at the show.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm excited to see you. That's wonderful.
WWRL will be there for sure. We'll be in full force, in effect. I think we're broadcasting live from there, in fact.
Yes, you are.
And so where can folks go to get tickets?
Well, we have tickets all over. We have actually, you go to the box office, but there are discount coupons all over town. If you look in any of the publications, whether it be the Village Voice or Gay City News, or any of the publications that are in the New York area, the Daily News, New York Times, you can really get a discount coupon. Also, you can go up online, Original GLBT Expo, and you can download your coupon there. So it's really exciting. And as you know, this helps pay for the show, and to help keep the voice of all of the organizations for the GLBT community.
And you get lots of great swag when you go there. There's T-shirts being handed out and free food and coffee.
And it's so much fun that over the 20 years, I know a lot of the attendees, and it's very nice to see the same folks and new folks every year, too.
Well, Sharon, thank you so much, and we'll see you this weekend.
And thank you, Yetta.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's go on to our next segment. I'm going to introduce our next two guests, Stephanie Fairyington. She is a journalist, a fact-checker, and researcher in New York City. Her work has appeared in The Atlantic, The New York Observer, Utne Reader, The Advocate, and Out. Also, Shirley Velasquez is an editor and writer who splits her time between New York City and Paris. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right. Perfectly.
That's about all I know in French. Velasquez has written for Elle, Glamour, Women's Day, In Style, Ms., Latina Magazine, and much, much more. Together they are co-founders and editors of The Slant, There's Always More to the Story, which can be found online at slanthere.com. If you've got questions or comments for Stephanie or Shirley, please call us 212-868-0975. Again, 212-868-0975. Welcome to Yetta Kurland Live, guys.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
You guys brought us donuts and treats, too. That was,
right.
Most guests don't do that, so that was very kind. Get a leg up there. So let's start out. Shirley, what is Slant?
So basically, The Slant is an online magazine that provides a forum for those who feel miscast in the press or misaligned somehow. As you know, the media frequently mangles the news by taking quotes out of context, missing important nuances, or intentionally biasing stories. So
bias in media? I have never heard that concept. Is that true? Wow. Yeah. We're going to get to that because I have a whole theory about that. That's probably not something I should be talking about on live radio, but we'll do it anyway. Go ahead.
So basically we've set up 3 columns, the main one being the Other Slant, which provides an unfettered platform for subjects to respond to the media's coverage on them or their work. Our second one is called And Furthermore, where we invite writers, directors, or journalists, and I love this one, to share anecdotes and points or things that they've written that have been cut from recently published or produced work due to space limitations, budgetary constraints, or conflicting artistic editorial whims. That's one of my
or media bias.
Or media bias again.
Or media bias,
right,
yeah.
exactly. And then our last one is the method, and that's what we're here to discuss more than the Matthew Breen story.
Yeah.
But that's where we ask media and entertainment veterans to discuss a certain aspect of their craft and share the influences that have informed their philosophical framework, or that has informed a lot of the decisions that they're making in their publication. So
it's great. It's courageous work. It's incredibly important work. I feel like every time we try to do something like this, the effort itself gets co-opted, and we have to keep reinventing that wheel and keep committing to those premises. Shirley, what brought you guys to create the Slant? What made you feel there was a need for it?
Well, as 2 seasoned journalists and fact checkers turned research editors.
See, I like that fact checkers is its own position. I think that's really important. I think that's great.
Now it is, certainly with the
it's
election.
a badge of honor. Totally. Go ahead.
So we saw firsthand how often the subjects of stories felt misrepresented or intentionally maligned in the media, and they would seek to set the record straight, often by sending letters to the editor, which often
did or did not get published.
Exactly.
Depending on what did you say, time, budgets, and or media bias.
Exactly.
Not necessarily in that order, but
exactly. So a lot, and oftentimes they'll send these long letters, and they'll be truncated to like 3 sentences if there is a correction or a response. Right. So we thought this would be a really good forum for them to elaborate on their point of view and how they felt misrepresented in the media somehow, or even wanted to add nuances, context, and to the story. So
before we jump into the Matthew Breen story, so here's my idea as I hatch it here on live radio. So whatever gave us the idea that media should be unbiased. I remember, I was at this Netroots workshop, and I was listening to some of the citizen journalists from the Occupy Wall Street movement, and there was this one woman who was talking about this incredible catharsis for her as a journalist, because I feel like oftentimes those of us who have marginalized voices or who have marginalized experiences in a social context often feel like we're not supposed to tell our story as journalists, because it's like the he-she thing. He is neutral and she is not, right? Like our progressive or ideas that are not kind of mainstream counter messages are considered to be the biased messages, right?
Right.
So she had this catharsis where she was like, you know what? I'm going to stop trying to be unbiased. Like she would say that she would over censor herself to try to get the other opinion. And there's gay marriage, and then there's well, gay people should die. I guess I should cover that side of it also, or whatever the topic was. So are we trying to get to a point where there isn't bias, or are we trying to get to a point where we are being responsible in our reporting, or how do we deal with the subjectivity of the human experience as we tell the story, as we create the story? New York Times is supposedly the all the news that's fit to print. It's the paper of record and so on and so forth. Right. How do we strike that balance? What is it we're trying to achieve as responsible people in media? Right.
I think the internet helps us a lot in this effort because it allows us a place to give context constantly, and I think that becomes a really important part of storytelling. Is just fact checking, for example, just any time that someone else can come in and say, this is not exactly how the entire story went down, or this is what was going on.
Two contexts to that.
Right.
Because one is you have instant access to knowledge. Knowledge is power, which you wouldn't normally have. And two, you have an immediacy to get your message out that if you weren't part of the power center, you wouldn't necessarily or traditionally have the access to it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. That's interesting. Well, we kind of feel like part of the reason we didn't call our main column Correcting the Record, we called it The Other Slant, because we feel like everything is inherently slanted. The idea of objective journalism is kind of passé. I mean, that's just not. I just feel like that's not even possible.
That's so 2008, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like 1950.
It's definitely preoccupied.
But at the same time, it's great that certain places are, like the New York Times, like CNN or whomever, are trying and striving that, because I do think it is a natural instinct to tell both sides. And, the idea of fairness is important. And,
Yeah. No, and there's also this idea of cyberbullying, right? So there's like something about the power balances, and there's all sorts of ways of really kind of using social media and new media to unfairly exacerbate those power dynamics or to exploit them in a very, I would say, irresponsible way. I don't know, right?
Right.
So it's complicated, but but it's a new frontier that hopefully allows all of us. And again, for those of us who are from marginalized communities, it's all too easy to be the target of an attack. And whether that be, the ability for people to hide behind aliases and make really outrageous attacks in very hidden and cowardly ways, frankly, or like you said, to have this kind of nuanced bias, that they don't. Do they realize or don't they realize, or maybe it doesn't even matter, or whatever. So very, very complicated. So let's talk about Matthew Breen. Yesterday you published an in-depth interview with Matthew Breen, the editor of The Advocate. What do you think? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Stephanie, is he the subject of media bias?
Oh yeah, no, he's not. We had him on for our column that Shirley described called The Method, where we ask media veterans about some aspect of their craft and kind of to try and get a sense of their philosophical framework and how it informs the decisions they're making in the magazine. So that's why we had him on. That was the only reason we had him on.
We were really curious what he, the way this started was we were curious about an op-ed piece he had written after Jodie Foster had given her not coming out speech. He wrote this really fun op-ed that took a look at what she had and hadn't accomplished and gave context to what she had done, and expressing a sort of longing that she had done this much sooner or much more direct way, and how that would have helped the community. And so we thought, this guy's great, and we've been wanting to talk about how he's helping boys and girls, really young kids, why he's relevant to young kids or to straight people even. Why is his voice important? So we wanted to get.
Now, The Advocate factors into the whole Harvey Milk story as maybe, this example of how gay media has, I don't know if succeeded, but made a splash. Is there a trade-off there? I mean, the way that The Advocate was portrayed in the Harvey Milk story was more of like, risk adverse, let's say. Has that compromised their integrity or their ability, let's say, let me say it a different way, their ability to be non-biased and to be unapologetic in their coverage?
That's such a great question, and I know Stephanie has a great answer, but I think for me, to me, one of the wonderful things about the gay community is that it will kind of always be counterculture to some degree, that the dominant pattern there. And so
from your lips to God's ears.
That's what
from your lips to God's ears. Yeah, so, we're not so sure about that, but
so even though there is a lot of,
in fact, we just got a Twitter question from one of our followers: is Anderson Cooper gay media?
Huh? Is he gay media?
Yeah, is that considered like The Advocate?
Just because
he happens to be, Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, he certainly. Well, I watch him a fair bit, and I think. Listen, he brings on a lot of important, great gay questions to his audiences.
Yeah.
So I find that I think he's trying. But is he gay media? No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, he definitely is part of the establishment. He's
and that's also a double-edged sword too, right? Like you want to be unapologetically yourself, and part of a thread of who you are is your identity.
Right.
At the same time, you don't want to be pigeonholed into being gay media, right?
Right.
And the gay voice says,
as a Latina, I don't want to be pigeonholed on Latino issues.
Right. As a Latina, how do you feel about this? On behalf of all Latinas everywhere,
right, exactly.
Shirley, how do you? Right, exactly. So that's it's interesting. So let's go to a caller because we have a bunch of folks calling in. Oh, cool. Again, you're listening to Shirley Velasquez and Stephanie Fairyington, co-editors of the Slant here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600 AM Equality Pride Radio. So maybe that's gay media as well, yes. or not. The questions here: 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. We're going to go to our next caller, Lavari. Lavari from Manhattan, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Thank you so much, Yetta. Hey, Shirley and Stephanie.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. So I have a question in regard to gay media. I'm an entertainer, and there was a platform about gay media. This was about a year ago. And there were representatives from Advocate there and other media as well. What is your take on, speaking of being pigeonholed and the Twitter follower asking about Anderson Cooper gay media, what is your take about what I find the trend of having a bunch consistently heterosexual people on the cover of magazines? One time I saw, I believe it had to be Out. It was like the 100. Yeah, so it was definitely Out magazine. A few years back, there was an issue like Out 100, and Madonna was on the cover. And yeah, we love Madonna.
Well, we agree that Madonna is a gay man, right?
I see that a lot. I understand there's money, and yes, people love straight entertainers. But do you think that there's kind of a trend there that maybe we do want to be so accepted that we have the need to consistently put straight counterparts over gay counterparts, like especially on magazine covers and media coverage and things of that nature?
It's a great question.
That is a great question. I think I'm thinking of it more from the business perspective, and I think putting Madonna on a cover of any magazine is going to help.
Some little aggregate positive effect on either.
Exactly, but she has also been such an advocate for the gay community that I feel like, she is to some a hero.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
So Steph.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that. Also, there's this whole category or this whole umbrella term queer, where I think that you can be a heterosexual person and be queer. And I think maybe some of these people might have a queer quality or a queer sensibility that's very, friendly to LGBT issues.
Yeah. And he touched on the historical relevance of it, too, because I think, 20 years ago, I don't know that Madonna would identify as queer, but she really is a queer icon.
Right. Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely.
And, I remember she would be showing up. I can't remember it was the Clit Club was the big, to do place, right? And she would show up with Sandra Bernhard. Yeah. This is wildly dating me, and I wish I could just take that all back, but here it is on live radio. She really was on the cutting edge and advanced rights for folks and has a perspective. I think that's important, yet she does not identify herself as LGBT. Is that necessary? At the same time, we want to see ourselves represented in our media. Is it selling out to have a straight people, and maybe she identifies as queer or not? It's a complicated issue, obviously.
Right. It is, definitely, yeah. It's a good question.
Yeah. I wanted to go back. Also, you, in talking about the Advocate, you also talked about some of the anti-marriage backlash in some of the LGBT community. What are the roots of that discourse, and talk a little bit about that? Stephanie, maybe I'll throw it to you.
I think gay liberation in the 60s and 70s was very critical of the institution of marriage. For the ways in which it was mostly in the service of men. It didn't benefit women as much as it benefited men. And that it kind of worked against queer people's interests. And I guess I should explain that a little better. I think that marriage, the reason a lot of queer people are against it is that it hierarchizes relationships outside okay. And I also think that it's, especially if you're a single queer person, or you're an older, there's older people that are single and are gay. There are a lot of
it makes you conform also to ways of being, right? You can be single, or you can be married. You can no longer be a domestic partner, if you want to be a domestic partner,
right,
or whatever
exactly.
ways that you want to.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what you were saying about queer existence being outside the normal paradigm, because maybe gay marriage moves us more towards just being like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Assimilating, and
which maybe is good for some, but you want to have the choice to be who you are, and like you said, the gay liberation movement did so much to try to open our minds to ways of being and different
ways of being, right, totally.
And it was interesting in the Breen article, the one thing that we didn't agree with him was about the idea that, he said that same-sex marriage had not really changed or affected the institution of marriage in and of itself, and where we thought that gay marriage had definitely changed marriage for straight people too. And the reason was that, that we came up with was that any time a country is involved in a national conversation about inequality for a minority group, we're going to get a lot of people who identify as the other, such as women, people of color, other sexual minorities, to start thinking about and talking about how they're also being left out and undermined.
Well, and that's important, I think. I totally agree with you. This is why I think that marriage equality is a radical thing, and I think we've done so much in creating marriage equality, and obviously we have a lot more to do, because it does radically change the institution.
That's right.
But, I mean, one of the other pieces of marriage is the way that it impacts women, right? I mean, that's a whole piece of it. So let's talk about gender. Let's talk about women. Matthew Breen is a successful, white, gender-conforming male. Is there a problem with, I'm assuming some of those things, is there a problem with him as a voice for such a diverse community as the LGBTQ community? And where are women's voices in the queer movement, in the LGBTQ movement of the 21st century?
Well, I'll go with the first part of that. I think that Matthew Breen has definitely showed a sensitivity to the different communities within the queer community.
Right. I don't think that his subject, the position he occupies socially as like a normal gender-conforming man, necessarily indicates how he thinks and or how sensitive he is to the multiplicity of perspectives in our community. I think he's very sensitive. I think he's very smart. And so I think that's all that matters. I don't really...
And like the Madonna example, not all of us can directly relate to all of the ways of being within the rainbow of who we are. So it's amazing and inspiring for us to see folks who are getting outside of themselves. As a white person, I work on anti-racism every day. It's about that kind of connecting the dots. Having said that, and we have just a few minutes left, but having said that, how do we bring more of those voices in, and how do we inspire all of us to get outside of ourselves, to make the connections, to see the interconnectedness, and to understand how race and gender presentation and all of the ways of being is actually an incredible strength in our movement?
Yeah, I guess I can answer that, in a very anecdotal way, and just telling you that as a heterosexual woman who is, did buy into the institution of marriage,
they got you.
Yeah, they got me. But my husband and I started really looking at a lot of our gay friends and looking at how they didn't subscribe to the gender norms that we were supposed to subscribe to. Like, the man does this and the woman does that. And so, for example, just very anecdotally, we started talking about the balance of power in our relationship, specifically about the division of labor in our home and how closely it often fell along gender lines. And so when we started talking about our gay friends who don't typically divide their household tasks in that same way across the female versus male dichotomy, he started showing a real sensitivity to my time.
That's awesome.
And he's French,
another
by the way.
example of how gay marriages don't hurt straight marriages.
They help them.
They help them.
Awesome.
My husband is from France, very, the man does this, the woman does that. And he is changing, and even his family is starting to look at, the way women do things differently in America and how that may help them too.
That's really powerful.
Definitely.
That's really powerful. So we've mostly run out of time. But what are you guys working on next, and where can people go to learn about your work? And
well, we're
it's too top secret to say.
No, it's not. We're doing an interview. We're doing an interview with Kevin Sessoms, who is a celebrity journalist for the Daily Beast.
Sure.
And we're going to ask him about celebrity journalism and experiences he's had and some backstories on some of the big stories he's done. So,
that's great.
Yeah,
You know, I'm gonna squeeze it in. This is probably the wrong. You always end on an upbeat, which is what you just talked about gay and straight marriage. But I will ask. You recently published an interview with Brian Fisher, who's an evangelical, anti-gay radio host, different than Yetta Kurland Live, who felt he'd been mistreated by the New Yorker. What are some of your reactions to that? What prompted the story? And what was it like interviewing a man who basically hates the LGBTQ community?
It was kind of surreal. I mean, we went to that piece because we read that and we were like, whoa, there's no way that this guy is not upset about the way the New Yorker portrayed him in such a negative way as a bully. The bully pulpit was the title of the story. And it was pretty surreal. I thought, I mean, we were sure he wouldn't talk to us because of all this stuff, these wonderful pieces.
They're the ones who talk the most.
It was, I mean, we got off the phone and felt like he was our uncle from the South.
That's great. I feel like you guys have like superhero capes and are flying around the city doing this great work. So thanks for that. All you can do is slanthere.com. Check it out. You're listening to Yetta Kurland Live. We'll see you again. We'll listen to you again next Wednesday.
Thank you so much.
Yetta. Yep.
The preceding program was independently produced. The views and opinions expressed were those of the program host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WWRL, its staff, or management.